Hey, guys. It's not going to make the speech longer. Hey, look, let me start off. I came for three reasons. One, on a personal note, to say thank you. Thank you. No, I know I'm not trying to be nice. This is God's truth. You guys, the culinary workers, were with me my entire career. I know how to say the word union. And I come from a neighborhood and a family that understands that there was a middle class built in this country, and this is not hyperbole, a middle class built in this country because of the union movement, because of the people I grew up with in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, and the steelworkers, and the folks that, in my neighborhood, you did one of three things. You became a policeman or a fireman, you joined a trade, or you became a priest. I wasn't qualified for any one of them. So hell, I ended up doing what I'm doing. But all kidding aside, I don't know whether Dee's here yet, but Dee has been my friend for a long, long time. Every time I see Dee, I say, Dee, you're lucky I didn't run. I would have made it hell for you. I would have made it hard for you. But all kidding aside, you've been just wonderful, wonderful to me. And on a personal note, throughout my career, thank you. I wouldn't have won without labor. I really mean it. I wouldn't have won. Second thing I want to say is that Catherine mentioned my son, Beau. You also helped elect my son, Beau, Attorney General of the state of Delaware. I don't even know whether you know it, but you did. And he was the finest man I've ever known. And he talked about, he had a lot of friends and a fair amount of influence in the Attorney General's Association. And when he announced for governor before he died, nobody even announced they were going to run against him. One of my favorite headlines, Catherine, was after Barack and I won the second term, big headline in the statewide newspaper said, Biden, dash, most popular politician in Delaware, dash, Beau. My dad used to have an expression. He said, you know your success as a father when you turn and look at your child and you realize they turned out better than you. And he did. No, he did. But here's the deal. My son had really very good judgment. And my son truly, truly, truly admired Catherine. He talked about her. He'd work with her. They come from the same cloth. She's Latina. He suffers from being an Irish Catholic, like me. But they have the same value set. That's how I got to know Catherine. That's how I got to know her husband, who's been a great supporter of mine as well. And so, I just want to say at the outset, and I make no bones about it, I made it clear to the Senate Campaign Committee that my overwhelming interest, equally as important as winning the presidency, was making sure that we won back an institution that I had great respect for. That's been lost. It's really has become part of the problem in Washington, the dysfunction in Washington, and it's sad. But it can be returned. And Hillary is going to need a Democratic Senate. He's going to need a Democratic Senate. And look, folks, the two things, my dad used to have an expression. He'd say, the single greatest sin one can commit is the abuse of power. And he meant it. The abuse of economic power, psychological power, physical power. He said the cardinal sin of all those sins, Joey, was for a man to raise his hand to a woman. Yes. And he really meant it. So that's why I wrote the Violence Against. Everybody thinks I am so passionate about the Violence Against Women Act, which I have spent the bulk of my life working on. Because, you're nice to say that, but they think that maybe my mother was abused. Maybe my passion comes from the fact that one of the women in my family was abused. It came from my father. My father was a graceful, decent man. And the thing that Catherine and my Beau had most in common was the reprehensible notions that went with abuse of power. And what we're seeing today, Catherine said she's tired of politicians going to Washington and basically doing nothing. Well, I'm tired of new politicians who want to go to Washington to demean women. I really mean it. I mean this sincerely. I know you all know. No one ever doubts I mean what I say. The problem is I sometimes say all that I mean. But here's the deal, guys. This is totally consistent. His admission of what is the textbook definition of sexual assault, I'm talking about Trump, obviously, is not inconsistent with the way which he's abused power all along. Remember when Hillary said in the debate, you stiffed all those workers. He said, maybe I didn't like the quality of their work. This is a guy who sits up. No, but I mean, it's not just to elicit cheers or boos. Think about how fundamental this is. This guy declared bankruptcy 6 or 7 times, but he never was moved out of that penthouse, which is a palace on the top of the floor, looking over devastated areas of New York who were devastated. This is the guy who said he rooted for the collapse of the housing market because that was good business. He could make money. And think about this one thing. I'm not joking. Can you imagine any other president in all of American history who would say things like that? I know, I really mean it. Republican or Democrat, can you imagine anyone saying that? So, folks, there's a whole lot at stake here. And what we need is, it's not just Trump. There's a number of people who share Trump's views, and they work in the United States Congress. They're there. They're in the Senate, many of them. And they support this notion of abuse of power. The more powerful you are, the more leeway you're supposed to have. Ladies and gentlemen, the thing I love about Catherine and my son Beau and others is that the only reason they're in it is to deal with the abuse of power. Look what she did when the banks caused such devastation in Nevada, as much as any state in the nation. How many people do you know and among you who never missed a mortgage payment, but all of a sudden found they were out of their home? They lost every single solitary bit of savings they had. The money they were going to use to send their child to college to borrow against. The money they were going to use to take care of their mom or dad when the other one passed away. The money they counted on for their retirement so that they'd never have to ask their children to sacrifice for them. Think of what happened to all those people. And what did this woman do? And my son Beau and the Attorney General from New York, when we settled with them and we shouldn't have the way we did, they said, not on your life. She went out and sued these banks. She brought in $1.9 billion back to give relief to people. Abuse of power. All these damn, I won't. All these folks out there who prey on our children and young girls and traffic them in sex trafficking. What did she do? She changed your law so now they go to jail when they are nailed. Think of what she's done. What's everything about her that's totally different than these other guys. Ladies and gentlemen, look, you have a situation here where, did you ever ask yourself the question, why would the Trump brothers pour $30 million in this state to defeat this woman? The Koch brothers. What would I say? Well, by the way, they are. The Koch brothers. Why do you think they do? All kidding aside. Why would they do that? Because they know she will not yield to any special interest. They know she will enforce the law. And look, folks, I've known Hillary for over 30 years. Everybody knows she's smart and she's tough. Everybody knows that. But you know what else I know about her, but she has not yet been able to break through and show? I know her heart. I know her heart. When she was the Secretary of State, she came in at breakfast in my home every single Tuesday morning for an hour and a half. And when she came to the Senate, I was what they facetiously refer to in the Senate as her rabbi. I was the one who got her on committees. No, for real. We've been close friends. And I know how much she cares. But ladies and gentlemen, you know, there's a double standard when women running and men running. And for example, when I talk about my son Beau, sometimes it catches me off guard, and I have trouble talking about it. And the press writes, well, that just goes to show that Joe is a passionate, loving father who adored his son. If he, in fact, no, let him go, that's okay, let him go, that's all right, let him go. Well, that's exactly right. But look, folks, if Hillary Clinton had lost, God forbid, her daughter, and she filled up, you know what they'd say? They'd say she's playing the woman's card. They'd say she's appealing for sympathy. There's a different standard. There's a different standard here. So it's harder for Hillary to show her heart. Just like it's harder for Barack to go out there and be angry as I get and passionate. What happens if he does that? He's an angry black man. One of the finest women I know. What happens every single time that Michelle shows passion? The right and some of the press calls her an angry black woman. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's certain realities we have to overcome, but here's the point. I want you to know, Hillary's going to win. But it's not enough. It's not enough she win just because how unqualified her opponent is. We have to talk the rest of this campaign about who she is, about her heart, about what she cares about. And she cares. She cares deeply. There's a reason why she's supporting the idea, along with Catherine, of free college education, free community college. You know, here's the deal. You know, the Republicans always talk about, we're for productivity. We want to grow the economy. We are. Well, I'll give you a little productivity fact. If we have free community college education, that puts 9 million people in school, and that means that it grows, the gross domestic product grows 0.2%. That's over $1 trillion over 10 years. Now, here's the deal. It costs $6 billion. They say, well, there the Democrats go again. But here's the deal, guys. Right now, in our tax code, per year, there are $1.3 trillion in loopholes. Right now. You just take one of those loopholes, which we proposed. It's called stepped-up basis. I'm going to get wonky on you here, but here's what it is. I didn't know what it was because I don't have any money. I have the dubious distinction. When I got sworn in as vice president and did my financial disclosure, the quote, and as my wife is a professor says you can Google it, it said, quote, it's probable no man has ever assumed the office of vice president with fewer assets than Joe Biden. I assume they weren't talking intellectual assets, but here's the deal. Right now, under the law, if you go out and buy $1 million worth of stock and it increases the value of $2 million over 4 years, and you sell it, you got to pay a capital gains tax, less than your regular tax, on that $1 million. You know, but if on the way to sell it, you got hit by a truck, God forbid, and your child inherits, and they sell it the next day, they pay nothing. It's called stepped-up basis. Wealthy people are good people. They're as patriotic as poor folks. But one thing they don't need is more tax breaks. It affects 0.4% of the American public, this stepped-up basis. And guess what? It doesn't generate one bit of growth in the economy, And it costs the federal treasury $17 billion a year. Here's the point I'm making. You can pay for all free community college for 9 million students and reduce the deficit by $11 billion a year at the same time. So here's the point I'm making, man. It's time everybody start paying their fair share. Give the middle class a break. And by the way, let me define what I mean by middle class. You talk to economists, they'll say, well, 52,100, they give you a number. It's not a number, it's a value set. To be middle class is to be able to send your kid to a park in your neighborhood where you know they're going to come home safely. Be able to send them to a high school that if they do well, they can get to college. Be able to own your home and not just rent your home. Be able to, if they get to college, find the money to get them there. Be able to take care of your mom or dad when the other one dies and hope your children don't have to take care of you. That's middle class. And it's getting clobbered. They're getting clobbered. How many of you know people, husband and wife, combined, maybe making $70,000, $80,000 a year? How do they make it when they have 2 kids? How do they send their kid to college? How many conversations went on among your friends this morning when a husband or wife turns at the breakfast table and says to the other, we need a new set of tires? And the other says, you got to get another 20,000 miles out of those tires. We can't do it now. I'm serious. I'm serious. Donald Trump and the Republicans, and heck, they don't get it. They have no idea what's being faced out there. So here's the deal. The reason why they're so desperate to make sure this Latino woman who's tough as nails and smarter than you are, they should know. The reason they're so frightened is they know she will not back down. She will fight like hell for all those things that affect people's lives. And by the way, what do? $8 million spent in an ad saying that this woman didn't go out and get those rape kits off the shelf and test them to find out who the rapists were. Costs a lot. I'm the guy that wrote that legislation. I wrote the rape kit legislation. I tried to get the Republican Congress to give us more money to test those kits. I tried to get governors to do it. She worked like hell to do that. Chick Heck voted, yeah, it is Chick. I knew his old man. Voted twice against funding testing those rape kits. And then they have the audacity to run $8 million worth of ads and say, this is the woman who did not test the rape kits. And by the way, all that year you had a Republican governor. What did the state legislature do to help? Zero. It took her 8 years, and we finally got it passed. And what happened? $6 million came to your state last year, and you're going to eliminate the backlog by 2018. But here's the point. These guys are doing the same malarkey. Here's what they do. They accuse you of their weakness. So don't have any of it, ladies and gentlemen. Look, Catherine believes everybody should be paid their fair share.
You condemn the war in Saudi Arabia.
No, it's a fair question. It's a fair question. No. Hey, man. Let me answer your question. Do you want me to answer your question? Well, hush up a minute then, okay? The answer is we have been pushing. Don't throw him out. Don't throw him out. He's a decent guy. Look, here's the deal. The deal is we've been pushing the Saudis as hard as we can not to go in to Yemen and bomb in Yemen. But the Houthis are equally as bad. They're just firing on American ships as well. That's why we're working so hard to get a ceasefire and get a negotiated settlement. So you're right. You have a reason to be concerned. Okay? Thank you. So look, here's the deal, guys. I got so much more to say, but I'm not going to say it because from where I come from, you make people stand on hard blacktops for more than half an hour, you lose all their votes. And when it's hot, somebody's bound to faint. And so, but here's the deal, guys. Look, we got 26 days left in this election. 26 days. Nevadas can still register until the 18th. And, pardon me? Online, yeah. I was going to, well, why don't you guys come up and do this for me? I don't have to tell you this. You all know it. But here's the point I want to make to you. What I want to plead with you about, even though we know that this guy is so shot himself in the foot, we're probably going to win the White House, and we got a first-rate candidate, here's what I don't want to have happen. And I've seen it happen throughout my career. I got elected to the Senate 7 times, more than anybody but 13 people in all of American history, and I say that because, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience, and elected twice as vice president. I started in the Senate when I was 29 years old. I've seen elections decided by a handful of votes statewide. I saw in the state of New Hampshire us lose a seat by 7 votes, S-E-V-E-N, in the Senate. We lost the presidency even though we won the presidency because of certain states. Here's what I want to plead with you to do. You're all obviously devoted to the cause. You're all obviously really strong supporters of Catherine. But don't wake up on November the 9th. And by the way, I encourage everybody to listen to Trump, vote on November 28th. Yo, Richie. But here's the deal, guys. Don't wake up the next morning if this is a close election and say, God, if I'd only taken my 82-year-old neighbor to the polls, if I'd only made a couple more calls, I knew at least 10 people that if I'd gotten them, they would have voted with us. Don't ask yourself that question. Don't be in that position. And don't kid yourself. Just look at how close and how we have underestimated every step of the way this guy. So don't be in a state of Nevada, which is a smaller state, you're a big state physically, but your total population. Don't end up in a position where you find out that, God, this election was decided by 1,300 votes for the Senate. Don't do it. Don't do it. So please, 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 up until the polls close, do everything you can to call your friends, get them to vote, check whether they voted. Because I'm afraid we're going to get to the place where it's like, well, this is okay. And I tell you what, folks, we cannot afford it. And you think labor is in trouble now. Watch what would happen. So guys, remember, we're in a position, I always get characterized in the national press as being either labor Joe or middle class Joe. It's not meant as a compliment. They meant like I'm not sophisticated, okay? No, I'm serious, if you notice how they do it. The other thing, if you read about me in the press, it's always Joe Biden's the White House optimist. Like I'm, as my grandpa would say, the kid who just fell off the turnip truck. I've been there longer than all of them. I got elected when I was 29 years old. I wasn't even old enough to be sworn in. I had to wait 17 days to be eligible to be sworn in. And I was listed as the optimistic, idealist candidate. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been doing this a long time. I give you my word. I am more optimistic about America's chances today than I've ever been in my life. I know every major foreign leader. And I can say with all the pressure, without fear of contradiction, I cannot think of one. I've known them for years. I can't think of one who wouldn't trade places with the President of the United States, take on his problems versus theirs. I remember back, some of you are not old enough, but a few of you men are. None of the women are old enough. Back in the 80s, remember? Japan was going to eat us alive. Remember, Japan was going to own us? I remember going up to the Wharton School of Finance and debating someone from the Heritage Foundation. And they're saying, no, we're done. And I said, there's no shot. Anybody think Japan's the competition? Raise your hand. No. I want to see Japan do well. It's in our interest they do well. Then we heard the European Union, 384 million people. They're going to absolutely crush us economically. Raise your hand if you think the European Union's our problem, our competitor. We want them to do well because it's best if everybody does well. Now it's China is going to eat our lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, I want China to do well, but guess what? They not only do not have enough energy, they don't have enough water. They're talking about a $2 trillion project to redirect their two major rivers north so they can provide water for the bulk of their population. Ladies and gentlemen, we're positioned to own the 21st century. North America will remain for this century the epicenter of energy, not the Arabian Peninsula, the United States of America, Canada, and Mexico. That's where, no, for real. By the way, the reason why all these companies are coming home is because to build a plant, natural gas is 3 times cheaper here than Europe and 7 times cheaper than it is in the Far East, in Asia. In addition to that, every poll shows, every study shows, American workers are 3 times as productive as workers are. This is real. I'm not making any of this up. So, folks, we have a chance. I give Barack credit, and I hope I helped, of taking the car out of the ditch, putting on a new set of tires, refurbishing the engine. It's now rolling down the road, man, at 40 miles an hour. We took care of all the really bad things out there. Now this vehicle can go 90 miles an hour. And that's the history of the journey of this country. And Hillary will write the next chapter because in America, we never bow, we never bend, we never yield, we never complain. We get up, we endure, and we overcome, and we're going to do it again. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's history of the journey. And by the way, this woman's grandfather made the journey. This woman's grandfather, like a lot of other people, made the journey, and they made us stronger, better. So vote for her. Vote for her and get out everybody you know. God bless.